And today we're going to discuss some Weinstein, a conversation about Bret and Eric Weinstein with me, Johnny Vedmore, and of course, Courtenay Turner. We're both people who are very interested in the Weinsteins. Um, when was your first time? Well, how did you first get towards even seeing the Weinsteins or understanding? When was your first time that you got involved with this?
So I learned of the intellectual dark web like, back in 2020. I know I was very late, but I really didn't question much then. I think I had a suspicion that my thoughts on the intellectual dark web back then were that I felt like a lot of it was a dialectical operation. That this whole kind of like a lot of them were that quote unquote anti-woke movement. And they claimed, like, even today, if you go to the Wikipedia, it'll say that they're the alt-right, which I found ludicrous because the only person out of the whole thing that you could even classify as maybe being on the right might be Ben Shapiro, but he's like a neocon. He's not a conservative. So I found it very odd, and I felt like the only purpose was that they're shifting the Overton window. It's a dialectical operation. So essentially, these were people who were arguing that a man's a man, a woman's a woman, and somehow that made them right wing, which was kind of silly. Um, but I did start really listening to. I know you know my story, but I started listening to podcasts for the first time in 2020. Um, everything was shut down, and I found myself with lots of time in my hands because I was fired from both the gyms I was working at, and all my speaking and performing engagements were canceled. And I couldn't communicate with anyone because I learned how to speak by reading lips. I didn't get hearing aids till I was almost 6 years old, so I literally learned how to speak by reading lips. And actually, you'll find this funny. My first accent was actually British. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, my baby nurse was from.
Which part of Britain, though?
It
That's the
wasn't real
question.
British. It was my baby nurse was from the British Islands. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So I was watching how her mouth moved because I spent more time with her than anybody else, and so I had a British accent, my first accent. But yeah, so I didn't realize how much I still depended on lip reading for clarity of speech until all the coping mechanisms I spent my life developing were then stripped from me, and I was starting to post things on social media. People were telling me I should start a podcast. I said that's a terrible idea. I don't even know what they are. Um, but I was on all these Zoom groups, and someone on the Zoom group heard my story, my birth story, and he said, "You need to be on Rogan." And I said, "What's a Rogan? Why do I need to be on it?" And he
What's
said,
the word? He said,
"Well,
"It's a smooth object that speaks nonsense." No, go on. Sorry.
yes, yeah, exactly." I started listening to Joe Rogan. That was kind of my introduction, but I found the intellectual dark web through a completely different path. I was really immersed in Roger Scruton. And I have different feelings about him today, but he's a British philosopher. I still really love his work on wine and beauty, but I think a lot of his he's a conservative, quote unquote, but he's a British conservative, which is very different than an American conservative. But Americans kind of seem to think that, they're all one and the same. But I do see him as a dialectical operator now. I didn't at the time. And I do still really appreciate his work on aesthetics and wine. It's beautiful. But I found Jordan Peterson through him. So I read a lot of his work, a lot of his books, and then I started watching some YouTube videos, and I saw that he and Jordan had done a lot of, shows, lectures together. And that kind of led me to the intellectual dark web. And then I found out about the whole evergreen uh, incident much later. Like I said, I was very late to the whole thing. I was always kind of suspicious of it. It just seemed very convenient. Again, as a narrative steering and Overton window shifting. I don't think that because you think a man is a man or a woman's a woman that makes you a conservative. I think that means you're kind of logical and you accept reality. So, yeah. So I thought so, but I started really listening mostly because people kept telling me I should start a podcast. So I wanted to learn what they were. And these people kept me company for a while because I couldn't talk to humans. So it was kind of like watching television, but I was listening to podcasts. But to bring us up fast forward, I had listened to this speech that Bret had done last year. in 2024. And I was actually very close to being at that event because I was in Geneva for the, it was like a group I was invited to combat the WHO. This is when they were doing their pandemic accords, right? And that same group was involved. There was some overlap with this Rescue the Republic movement. And so I listened to the speech and I was just like floored because it's now the title of this event is Rescue the Republic. Yes, I understand that the United States is a byproduct of Western civilization. I'm a huge fan of Western civilization. I, of course, care about, the West, but I care about the whole world. But it is very specifically when they say the Republic, it's not the West. They mean a constitutional republic, which is, that's the United States. So I found it really odd that it may be a 20-minute speech, and the first 15 minutes he keeps talking about how we have to save the West. And I'm like, okay, great, we should save the West, but why do we keep saying the West at Rescue the Republic? I was just confused. Just, my antenna's going off here. And then the last 5 minutes he said, to save the West, we have to phoenix the Republic. And, if my jaw had fallen on the floor, it did. And I was just kind of shocked. I mean, as I said, I've had questions along the way, but I wasn't paying as much attention until really that moment. I said, okay, now this is really, my spidey senses are really starting to tingle here. What's going on? What's this all about? And it wasn't a throwaway. Like, he didn't just say it and then leave it. He spent the next 5 minutes giving us this whole spiel from his evolutionary science background of why we need to phoenix the Republic. And that led me on quite the little rabbit trail, as they say, to investigate a little bit more into him. And that's where I started finding out about this Game B movement, which again is not covert. It's on his Twitter handle, like it says Game B.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my story. How about you?
Yeah.
You've been working on this
I
for
mean,
much
this
longer
is
than me, so.
yeah. Well, when I started in like doing journalism, I started about 2015, 16. It started rolling, and then by 2017, I was writing my first big articles, and I was trying to make sense of politics, and I was trying to make sense of what was happening. But there was loads of things happening because I was on the left. I'd always been on the left. My father was a steel worker from South Wales. There's no way you'd be anywhere but the left. You'd be crucified where I was if when you were young, if you were fat, right, or something. Um, the graffiti on the walls around town when I was a little kid was fuck poll tax. Everybody was fighting against these savage right wing government cuts all over the place. And for me, the left was a massive part of my life. And I started creating a show. I in about 2015, I started creating the first podcast. It was a test. It was to see, but it didn't work out. And I called it. I was thinking for ages, and I called it Left Hard and Left Hard TV. Like hard left, but left hard, and it sounds like you're left and retarded because I had come to get to I got to the point where I felt everybody around me was retarded. Like I was saying, oh, these right wingers, they're horrible, aren't they? And I was looking around and it was like, wow, these left wingers, they're getting even worse. And I'm hanging around with them. And I no longer felt at home. I no longer felt comfortable, to be honest. I was a musician as well. I was out gigging a lot and I was meeting people who considered themselves on the left, but really I don't think anybody knew where they were. They didn't even know what they were talking about most of the time. And I had to go on a journey myself. I'd already started researching stuff, so I was already into researching. So by the time I started writing properly and getting some good articles together, I started looking for inspiration. I started looking for a few things. One of the things I was looking for was logic. I was trying to understand logic very early on. That kind of led me to Jordan Peterson. So when I started going through each of Jordan Peterson lectures, first his Bible lectures eventually. I watched all his Bible lectures 3 times. That's a lot. That's a long time.
I
Lot
watched his
like
whole Maps of Meaning and his Archetypes of Personalities series, and he had
amazing.
features,
Really, really good.
2 of them. They were great. Yeah.
Yeah, the way he translates or envisions what the Bible means is at times, it doesn't matter if it's correct or not.
Right.
It feels illuminating, and it gives you some sort of like perspective to have your own view from, at least. I appreciated a hell of a lot of what I do. I started to get a bit of a crush on Jordan Peterson. He's handsome father figure, something that most young men miss. And I was like, oh, he's lovely. Is that people bought me his book, 12 rules to
Rules
kicking
for
the can
life.
down the road. Yeah, whatever. you know, make your bed. Why don't you make your bed? Yeah, okay. You really thought about that one, didn't you? No, but anyway, I didn't, I remember trying to read his book and going, I don't really want to read this. This is shit. I mean, it was bad. It just felt like your dad moaning at you. And so I didn't really want to get through it, but I enjoyed his lecture series,
Did you
his
read
talks
Maps of
about.
Meaning or just the 12 Rules of Life?
No, just parts of 12 rules, and I was like, I probably read about 4 rules, and I
Okay.
tidied my room. There you go, Jordan. I hope you're happy. Anyway, but that wasn't the point. What the point was I suddenly had this like little bit of a man crush, and what I was realizing when I was watching, especially the Bible lectures, I was realizing that this guy, lots of young men and lots of men have a man crush on Jordan B. Peterson. It's like, no, people like that normally they attract a female audience, but he was very much traditional. And one of the reasons he came to fame in the first place, and everybody started watching his lectures, was because, of course, he was standing up against trans right activists and seeming to speak sense to nonsense. But the problem is that even on that part of that debate, there's real nonsense, and there's just people just trying to live their life and try and find an identity.
Sure.
I understand that completely. I understand. I had lots of friends when I was young. Their parents told them they didn't like the way they looked, they didn't like the way they dressed, they didn't like the way they act. They were too boy-y, they were too girly, and nothing ever worked.
Right.
It was never going to change. Nothing ever going to change. It seemed like a meaningless argument, but I was caught up in it. And my best friend was caught up in it too. Something we shared in common. We started watching all of the sort of conversations about the trans rights stuff. And then I started thinking, okay, I'm supposed to be on the left wing, and the left wing's it's being painted as crazy by what seems to be quite a sensible libertarian right leaning side. And I was doing research at the same time. And the guy you mentioned, I think he was one of the guys who came down and did presentations for the Traditional Britain group. And the Traditional Britain group is like a relatively far right conservative group in the UK with people like
That's who you're referencing?
go on.
Roger Scruton?
Yeah. I think he did a lecture one of the Traditional Britain but I had started researching the right and what it looked like properly. Started to get to know these characters. Of course, I was looking for stories where I could undermine what they were saying. I was a journalist, and that's what you do. But it's not what you do. Eventually, you realize you kind of you look at all parts of it, and you get a much more objective view on what it all means. Because the more I looked at the right, the more I didn't feel like I was on the left anymore.
Right.
And I didn't mean I felt like I was on the right. But then there was Jordan B. Peterson had brought me into this area. I started listening to Joe Rogan. I started listening to Ben Shapiro, and I hated him with a passion. Of course, you start to listen to all these because they're all going on. I'm forgetting his name now. Rubin, Dave Rubin.
Yeah.
they go on his show. Peter Thiel goes on there too. So I started to be presented with Peter Thiel. Bret Weinstein comes. The whole transgender debate starts to go wild, and Bret Weinstein has that evergreen moment,
Mhm.
and I'm I'm torn. I'm torn because Bret Weinstein, I feel like I feel caught up with the flow of the narrative, you know, like I'm on the right side all of a sudden.
Uh-huh.
You know, I'm with him, I'm emotional. He's emoting constantly about his terrible experience at Evergreen. He he sounded like a really whiny little bitch. Like the whiniest little bitch around. And I was like, I really like him, but I feel like pity for him.
Right.
And yet he wants me to somehow like listen to him. And I didn't feel that it added up, but I still liked him. Liked him.
He's
I
very
like Joe
likable.
Rogan.
I've met him, and he is
Yeah.
very likable. Yeah.
I bet, I
Nice
bet, I
guy.
bet. I liked Jordan B. Peterson
Mm-hmm.
very much. But Ben Shapiro, I listened to him every day for a year and a half, or just over a year. Going, it's not funny. Don't laugh. It's not something anybody should have to do. But I wanted to understand. I was studying logical fallacies by this point, and I was going backwards and forwards to work. I was working in a 2-star hotel, like one man doing like everything, and then writing articles behind the desk as best I could, and listening to Ben Shapiro on the way to work, and it was whiny as well, but it was all whataboutism. He was always constantly going, you know, oh, this guy, they're saying this about us, and he's pointing at something that's true about the right or the Israeli leaning right, and then he'll turn around and say, oh, but then look at them. What about them? What about what they're doing? And it doesn't make two wrongs don't make a right or whatever, you know. But that's basically all he does. He uses one logical fallacy constantly, and they were going in arguing against children. They were going into colleges, and I was feeling really angry because there's loads of people who could actually have an argument against Jordan B. Peterson and win. Loads of people who could have an argument against Ben Shapiro and win. But none of them were having an argument with Ben Shapiro or Jordan B. Peterson because those guys were all in college arguing with children so that they could win the arguments, like Charlie Kirk does now. Go and argue with little kids and then be like, oh, look, I'm the big man. I'm so clever. Look at me. You know, you've had an extra 25 years of experience, loads of, you know, understand how to wield words, and you will destroy someone who's young in an argument. If you've got enough confidence as well, completely destroy them. You can see where they go wrong, and you can lead them into that place if you want to, you know, if you've got enough. So I was listening to Ben Shapiro and realized, okay, I wrote an article about Ben Shapiro, a little article, and I wrote one about the intellectual dark web. And I said, I don't agree with all these people, but I think we should be looking at it and having a conversation about it. And we should be understanding what they're saying, and we should be thinking about that, because I find some of it fascinating, but other parts of it is obviously they're not the same people as me.
Mm.
And I got kind of a little bit obsessed by it. But it was like Bret Weinstein had come in being this little whiny bitch. And I'd had all this love for him. I was like, oh, poor little Bret. Put him in the little, cradle him a little bit. And then Eric Weinstein come along. Just came out like he was one of the last to appear for me. And it was about late 2018, 2019, around then I first started watching stuff. And I felt, I sensed bullshit, big bullshit. He would go on shows, and someone would ask him a question, and it's clear that he didn't know the answer or didn't have an answer, and he'd say, let's think about it this way, and he'd say something completely different, and he'd change the conversation completely. I'd been looking at logical fallacies for ages, and I was starting to watch him wield logical fallacies together when he went into to arguments, but I just felt something was totally wrong. And then I started looking at him and his videos that he was doing outside, just when he started doing videos solo, and he was walking down the street and he doing a video of himself, and it was him trying to manipulate the people who were watching, like just directly. You can't see him. He can't see how obvious it is what he's doing. Now, at this point, I think all of us can be spared a little bit of shame for not realizing how much of a danger Peter Thiel is, and realizing that people who are connected with Peter Thiel are also extremely dangerous people, and that they are on the front line of creating the fifth generation warfare techniques that are being slammed upon us now. So Eric Weinstein is actually a really, really, really quite a significant actor. So I was like, he's the weak point. He's a problem for me. And so I started looking into Eric Weinstein in about 2019, 2000, and I came across something. I came across an old website he had on archive.org. He had a new website, but it didn't mention his old website. You only go back a certain way. But if you found the other website, go back and you discover he wrote all of these papers. And the papers he wrote were things like for UN and for JP Morgan and for lots of big organizations. And so one paper, very interesting, called Migration for the Benefit of All. And
Migration replacement, right? For the benefit of all.
yeah, but it is, I mean, we'll get into this.
Okay.
But when yeah, that's the article that I eventually wrote, because I was about to write this article back then and no one would have cared. No one would have been interested. 2019, it was way too early to reveal that Eric Weinstein wasn't who he said he was. He had too much support. It would not have done any. So when I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. There's something there. But then I met Whitney, went off to Chile, started writing for Unlimited Hangout, had written the first Epstein article, started researching for One Nation Under Blackmail, was writing the Schwab articles and revealing all about Schwab's hidden history, going on show after show about all of that sort of stuff. And life just went blah, 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 and then cared, moving backwards and forwards between South America. Eric Weinstein was very much right on the back of my mind. In actual fact, all the intellectual dark web were. While COVID was happening, Jordan B. Peterson proved himself to be a total and utter sellout of the highest order. Bret Weinstein turned out to be also, I would say, a sellout, but still revealed himself to be a whiny little bitch in a bandana, instead of just being a whiny little bitch. Ben Shapiro showed himself exactly to be support the agenda, exactly, just the Israeli, like, strong American.
Well, he was telling everybody they had to go take the shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Yeah. I mean, he was. They all were actually. I mean, Jordan.
Bret Weinstein got esoteric about it.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, he wasn't. What he was offering was like I say the flippant comment about the bandana thing. I mean, like saying, "Oh, to stand up against tyranny, you don't wear a paper mask. No, you should wear a bandana instead." That is like, it's a simplistic idea of what you think humans will believe.
Right.
He was trying to target people and manipulate people by doing that, for them to do the thing that they want to do,
Right.
them to do, to make it look, to play along.
Well,
and
you couldn't go to his events unless you had taken it. So
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, he said it quite clearly.
Yes.
So that period of time, not interested even looking at them. I had bigger fish to fry. I was on the Epstein case. I was on a lot of the Pottinger case was bubbling around. What came up later with the Musk articles from Musk and Epstein, well, that was starting off. I was starting to look around and find different things. I was really enjoying myself journalistically. And then an unexpected person, the amazing Polly, was having an argument last year, at the end of last year. It must have been just before the election. So when was the election? November? Was the election November?
November.
I would say it was September or October. She was having an argument with Bret Weinstein online about something or just saying something. And I said to her, I remember when I was researching back in the day, discovering something about Eric Weinstein that's really interesting. Should I go away and write something quickly and show you what it was that I found? And she said, yes. And so I went away and wrote Eric R. Weinstein's Great Replacement, which is a very short piece. I normally write long, sprawling articles. This one was like 1,200 words and basically used his own words from his own paper. And it was a paper he wrote for the UN. And of course, it is setting out the roadmap for economic migration that we see being enacted exactly today. And that was, I was already on the trail of the edge stuff. I was about, when I released that article, I was already working on Epstein Musk, the third culture, about Epstein, Musk going through an Epstein funded course in 2008, run by Richard Thaler, head of the Nudge Unit. So I knew that Eric Weinstein had been involved in Edge as well. So I found it very interesting that was something that was coming up again. So it may as well come up because I knew that was going to be the center of what we're looking at very soon on. I mean, most recent, for people who don't know, my most recent article about that Epstein Musk SpaceX offenders is about a joint Edge SpaceX course that was funded by Epstein and run at SpaceX that was on synthetic genomics, which is the building blocks of transhumanism, of course. It's extraordinary that this isn't widely reported already. This joint conference training course that was about 3-day course happened a day and a half after Epstein got released from prison for molesting a child. So that's wild. And at that point in 2009 and onwards, Eric Weinstein gets involved in Edge every year with the responses and gets involved in a Serpentine Gallery present.
I think his first question was 2010, but in 2009, he did the Economic Manhattan Project at the Perimeter Institute, which was with Edge. And this is actually the origins. It's kind of like when Jordan Hall, Bret, and Eric all met. And it's also, I think it was Lee Smolin who was involved in that. And I said Paquette. I might be mispronouncing him, but yeah, so it was very early kind of seeding ground is where they met and started percolating these things. But I'm also curious if when you were looking, so at the Edge Foundation, they did this at Rebooting Civilization. Are you familiar with this?
No, go on.
Oh, okay.
Explain.
So they did two that I found, one in 2001, one in 2002. But the one in 2001, I'm just going to ask you to take a guess of what the date was.
I just feel like it's got to be 9/11. Go on.
It was 9/10/01. The day before, they do a seminar, Rebooting Civilization. Everything is up for grabs. Everything will change. There is a magnificent sweep of the intellectual landscape right in front of us.
Oh yes, there is. Oh yes, there is.
Right? I mean,
for the rich, for the richest. That's what Edge is all about as well. Edge is about the richest in society.
Yes.
What Jordan B. Peterson does is probably for the richest in society. What Bret Weinstein does is probably for the richest in society. What Joe Rogan does is probably for the richest in society. Don't think they're helping out the poor. Don't think they're lifting people from council houses or from publicly owned properties and putting them on the property ladder and helping them live a good life. These guys are manipulating people, turning people against each other and reforming society into their twisted image, which is vile and violent, you could probably say. Both of those things, I think we can all agree. that a world envisioned by someone like Joe Rogan would be very stupid.
Yeah, so I'll just read this first paragraph. It says, one aspect of our culture that is no longer open to question is that most significant developments in the sciences today, i.e., those that affect the lives of everybody on the planet, are about, informed by, or implemented through advances in software and computation. The EDGE event presented an opportunity for people in the various fields of computer science, cosmology, cognition, evolutionary biology, etc., to begin talking to each other, to become aware of interesting and important work in other fields. It goes on, it's pretty long. But yeah, this was and then they did another one the next year. I haven't found any beyond that, but I just thought that was fascinating. 9/10/2001, they do a seminar on rebooting civilization. The day before 9/11.
Yeah. One thing about Edge is that you can look at it and what they're doing over and over again and not realize its importance until suddenly everything, the stars align in your own head. I had done the first Musk Epstein article about the third culture. Now I had come across the fact that he was involved in another one, but I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, I got too much to do. I'll leave it for another time." You know, it's that sort of and I went off, and then I came back to it and started looking at it and started realizing, my God, this is even more important than the first one. That's insane. This, like, I saw it and was like, oh, well, no, this is the big fish. But every time you look back at what they're doing at Edge with much more knowledge and a little bit extra sort of understanding of who these people are, the more you realize how dangerous what they're doing was, how evil what they're doing is, how removed from what we'd say humanity itself, like being humane. That these people, when they actually hear the conversations now, we're having a conversation here about Eric Weinstein and Bret Weinstein, and we've gone to Edge, and this is a deep rabbit hole we can go down. But I think we want to get to Bret Weinstein and have a little conversation in the same way about Bret Weinstein. But I just want to say a couple of things about this that I think are necessary. Eric Weinstein is one of the most important people to understand the current paradigm of what we're living through. I don't think people realize there's no better example. I know I jokingly call him Fat Kissinger and stuff, but there's actually a reason behind that, and I'll go into detail on this in a coming article. But he's like Epstein in a sense. You scratch away at the surface of what Weinstein is, and you find out he's not just got his foot in one door. He's not got his finger in one pie. He's not only writing the migration policy for the UN. He's not only doing that. He's mapping out ideas for hedge funds and for banks like JP Morgan. That's pretty significant as well. He's trying to solve, or at least look like he can solve, the theory of everything, which some other very good scientists have been also trying to solve, but he's tried to place himself as the main voice on it when other people know much more about it. And he talks about, this massive shape E8 and all of this stuff. It's very distracting, and there's a reason why you need to be distracted, because like Epstein, Weinstein is an arms salesman for the worst genocides on the planet and the worst wars on the planet, but he's in disguise. You look at him, you look at Eric Weinstein, and he looks like he's giving you sense. He's talking sense to you. He is murdering women and children every single day. Eric Weinstein. He works for one of Thiel's main company. He's the managing director of Thiel Capital, and one of the projects that they fund is an organization There is AI drones that are being used, especially in Ukraine. I yet discover where else they're being used, but I can think you can imagine, can't you? You can imagine where they would be using drone technology to bomb women and children on wars that they've created themselves via neocon fuckery. I think that's the only way you can say it. He did some of the contracts that under Eric Weinstein's leadership there have been directly involved in drone technology in the Ukrainian war front. So and a lot of money, a lot of funding there. So however much we talk about, when I wrote Migration for the Benefit of All about Eric Weinstein's writing of a paper in between 2000 and 2002 for the United Nations, for the Migrant Division of the United Nations, which mapped out what we see happening, enacted on in real time today, the migration policy that we see enacted. When I was writing that, that was, the worst thing I thought. But like Epstein, it unfolds and it unfolds and it unfolds. And soon you work out that Eric Weinstein isn't just lowering the wage of native workers without any backup plan for the future of what they do. Something will happen. Something that will appear. That's what the paper says. Something will appear that we don't know about now that'll sort out all of the problems. Don't worry about it. He's not only doing that, he's murdering women and children. He's involved in the front line of it, and he's acting like he's the man who's the most sensible. He's the new wave. He's something else. He's principled. He's ethical. He's moral. He's not. He's the head of a company that's dealing arms just like Jeffrey Epstein did. He's involved in Edge just like Jeffrey Epstein was. He's involved in trying to work out these problems that about dividing society, and so that they can then rebuild their own society in their own image. So then I think we should go across and talk about Bret Weinstein.
Yes. So I was going to find it, but the Economic Manhattan Project that he was doing in 2009, he talks about, of course, this is a response to the quote unquote financial crisis of 2008. And he designs like this whole plan, and he talks about like he doesn't call it game B, but he like plan A and plan B economic modeling. But I don't know if I can find it. So, oh, there it is. Yeah. The Economic Manhattan. I think it's very interesting also that he calls it the Economic Manhattan Project. So it's like a play on the Manhattan Project, right? And so, yeah, here he says this led to the Perimeter Institute Conference, the economic crisis, the implications for the science of economics. According to the organizers, concerns over the current financial situation are giving rise to the need to evaluate the very mathematics that underpins economics as a predictive, descriptive science. A growing desire to examine economics through the lens of diverse scientific methodologies, including physics, complex systems, is making way to meeting of the leading economists and theorists of finance together with physicists, mathematicians, biologists, and computer scientists in an effort to evaluate the current theories of markets and identify key issues that can motivate new directions for research. So this ties into, right, that's Eric Weinstein over there. I don't know if I've heard them say that it's Weinstein. I don't know. But yeah, so he over there on the left. But yeah, so this ties in with all of the complexity theory stuff and the evolutionary science stuff, which is what my article on the Epstein game B connection was all about. And really what it looks like is all of this was just a shell for transhumanism and technocratic funding. Hang on, let me pull this up.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Look, there he is.
Yeah.
There he is.
Giving his
He's doing Vogue, strike a pose.
and
He's
he
doing his
was
dancing.
recently on a show, like very recently, talking about how he thinks Epstein is a construct. And I found that kind of like a
I know. Oh no, I know. We'll get. I mean, I'll get to that in the article I'm writing about Weinstein. I mentioned that within the intro because it's very. Listen, there's a lot to be known about Eric Weinstein. There's a lot that people don't understand. Back in 2020, I remember sitting down and mapping out the idea of what an article about his life would be. And I was like, oh, I need to fill in what he did in these years and these years and these years and these years.
Mm.
And when you do, and you look at his whole life, you realize, yeah, it takes a construct to know a construct, that's it.
Well, it was very, I mean, just if you even take him at face value, let's say you did, he kept talking about in that interview, he kept saying how he didn't understand why Epstein was so familiar with his work, which is, if you know his history, I mean, obviously he was familiar with his work. He kept inserting himself. So why wouldn't Epstein be familiar with who he is and know what his work is? I mean, it was a very strange comment. Like he kept saying that,
Yeah, that suggests that he knows.
Sorry, he kept saying he knows so much about me, and there's no reason for him to know anything about me. Meanwhile, he's doing the Economic Manhattan Project 2009, and then 2010, 2013, straight through 2018. He's part of this last question series, the annual question series. So yeah, it was strange.
Yeah, I think it suggests because I mean, when you listen to so when I was writing the Schwab articles, I listened to loads of interviews about Klaus Schwab,
Yeah.
and sometimes he would do a certain he would do a tell, you could say, that he was lying or that there was something to look there for there. He would say something and then he would equivocate afterwards, like when he was talking about his time with Herman Kahn and John Kenneth Galbraith, and then he quickly like went on about something else, Kissinger, and he acts a certain way only at certain times. And it was at times when he wanted to move on from that subject because it's best you only basically know the top layer of it.
Right.
You got to get on. Everything else he goes on about in length, but certain things he wanted to skip off. You get a feeling that Eric Weinstein wants to skip off lots of different subjects really quickly and move on. This is something I saw on when I was saying about the Joe Rogan show, where he says, he'll say something and he'll say, well, think of it this way. And Eric Weinstein does this a lot. He says, think of it this way. And then he inserts a separate thing into people's heads and they no longer think about the original thing that he has no idea about.
Right.
So it's a way for him to move away subjects. Oh, that's a beautiful picture. What's going on there?
So this is their questions, right? So Eric asks, this is in 2018, the last question, it was the annual question for Edge Foundation. And then they had a last question series where they asked the scientists, what's the last final question? And Eric says, there's something unprecedented happen when we finally learn our own source code. And then Bret says, can humans chart a course that is a non-evolutionary course that's game and theoretically stable? And this is very interesting. I've heard Eric actually.
That excites you, doesn't it, Courtney? That excites you.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack in that. I mean, what do they mean by all this? But Eric has.
You know what they mean. Don't you know what they mean?
I can speculate. But I think that so Eric has actually talked about it, and in this, I think it was with Lex Friedman, and he says how. I
sorry, that's I happens every time.
But yeah, so in that episode with I think it was Lex Friedman, he says that this is
go on. Sorry,
this is this could be human Skynet moment. Well, that's quite a
no. Is that a good thing? Is that
well,
a good
he says
thing?
he's a little bit concerned about it. I mean,
a little bit concerned about the takeover of an eradication of humankind by the robots. Just a little bit concerned about the moment humans hand over everything.
Yeah. And then, of course, we've got Bret's comment, which, I mean, to me, that's like if we were to put game B into one sentence, I think that kind of is a very cryptic way of explaining what is game B, at least for
Yeah,
half of it.
agreed.
What?
When I first saw that, because when I was looking through the Eric Weinstein associations with Edge, and then I was also looking at some of the Elon Musk ties.
Yeah.
I hadn't really looked at Bret because Bret only had like this one submission with Edge. So it was like, oh, I'll look at that later and last. And it was only right at the end, after I was at the end of SpaceX Offenders, that I went back and I was like, I'm gonna have a little look. I'm putting a little bit about Bret Weinstein as well because it's related to Eric, and Eric's in the article. So I should put in. And I looked at what the title was, and I was like, "Wow, that's." I've already heard what that is because I've been watching you talk about it.
Yeah. So, what's interesting is Bret was like one of the early co-founders, and so there is kind of like a split. Now Jordan has informed me that there are 3 stages, but there was a schism, and Jim Rutt talks about this within the Game B community, because the early Game B community. So again, Jordan Hall met Bret and Eric at this Economic Manhattan Perimeter Institute event. Manhattan Project Perimeter Institute, which was what
We just used to call it dogging back in the day, but go on.
what?
No, it's all right. I used the British term for sex in a car park, but keep going.
Yeah. So, they met, and then they didn't really connect until Jordan Hall and Jim Rutt were both involved with the Santa Fe Institute. And now in my article, I talk about how Epstein had funded Santa Fe Institute. Jordan has now informed me that he has funded more than Epstein into the Santa Fe Institute.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you can trust him. Is that a barometer of trust?
Interesting.
Yes, but I put more money than Epstein into that corrupt organization, so you can trust me more than him.
Right,
You?
I guess
You should
that's
see
what
my basement.
but I was very curious if there was an overlap because it's New Mexico. And so they didn't really, they knew each other, Jim Rutt and Jordan Hall. Jim Rutt was a chair for quite some time. And then Jordan Hall was a trustee from 2007 to 2011. And this overlaps with the time when Epstein was funding Santa Fe. But simultaneously, Jim Rutt was trying to launch a political party. And so he creates this, he called it
An American political party.
American political party. And he called it so he started to create these meetings. He called them the Stanton meeting. So Stanton, Virginia, outside DC, right? Stanton, Virginia. He called them the Stanton meeting. And the party was called the Emancipation Party. And so this brings us to where we are. Ties in with everything that's going on with this United Independent Movement. So this Stanton meeting, they were doing this Emancipation Party was very much like it's a very similar to like a Bernie Sanders kind of platform. They wanted universal health care, a variation of basic income. They have other reforms listed. Yeah, so this was called the Emancipation Party. So the Jordan Hall was involved in the Stanton meeting. They brought Bret Weinstein in for the 11 evolutionary component, the evolutionary biology, because they're merging these concepts with complexity theory. It's all rooted in Darwinian theory. So there's a schism though, because they were vying for institutional reform. So we've got these people who are the way Jim Rutt explains it is that the boomers were all in. They loved the idea. He thought he could kind of convince the Gen X, and he said, but the millennials were such anarchists that the idea of a political party was anathema to them. And so he said, well, we can't really move the needle with the political movement without the millennials. So they kind of dropped it, but it was Thor Mueller, who's, he's like a business branding guy. He wrote that book on like getting lucky with your business. I forgot the exact title, but Get Lucky something, planning your business. And he suggested they keep the name Game B for branding purposes. And so they did, but there was a schism because you had this other group that Jim Rutt calls like the woo-woo. And that was the people who were like the disciple, get lucky, how to put planned serendipity to work for you in your business. Yeah. And so then
But those were the people who were disciples of, you were going to
Barbara
say?
Marx Hubbard.
I thought you were going to say Barbara Marx Hubbard,
Yeah,
but sorry, I heard you like to do it.
like the Zach Stein.
Barbara Marx Hubbard. That's how she'll
I'm
walk when
Terry
she comes
Brand.
back. I am Max Hubbard, here to eat your brains of your children. Hello. That's
Yeah.
basically it.
Well,
Sorry.
there's a clip actually in my article. And I don't know if it was like a slip or what, but she actually says eating babies. I was horrified.
It's a-
I linked.
well, at least, I mean, if they just start saying it out loud, at least we could finally be like, oh, wow, you know.
Oh my
We all knew it, though. Anyway, we all knew it. So will it really change us? And will we suddenly be like, oh, now we're up in arms? Well, we do.
That's really what we mean. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so we've got like these people who are like the Daniel Schmachtenberger. Jordan Hall, in his response to me recently, tried to tell me that Daniel's only tangentially involved with Game B. I don't know how tangential he is when he's got a whole series on like, the war on sense making. He's partners with Jordan on the Consilience
I
project.
mean, a senseless answer about something related to the war on sense making is that I think the problem is with all of these. This is okay. So just to say what you're saying here again says, for me, these people, they move to an area of semantics, like Eric Weinstein does when I released Eric R. Weinstein's Great Replacement. He eventually had to respond to it because people kept tagging him in it all the time. I eventually had to respond to it, and when he did, me and him had a backwards and forwards. And he tried to blame everything. He said, "Is this mass Gazan part of the media? Is this the Whitney Webb part of the media?" He tried to go through everything he could to kind of tar me with some sort of brush, and we had a backwards and forwards. Eventually, now he's actually blocked me. He's actually got away, but it's something he was saying then triggered my mind. I can't remember what it is.
So yeah, they're kind of arguing semantics. And so
Oh yeah, so now he's had to he's blocked me, but he's had to respond to Josh Walcott. Lovely Josh Walcott. He's a beautiful man. I love that guy so much. We've Champagne Joshi on X, if you haven't followed him already, and you should. He's one of the most level-headed people around. He has been writing for Zero Hedge a little bit recently as well. He's so level-headed. He's such a good human being. I like him so much. I'm such a big fan of Josh. And he tagged in my article about Eric Weinstein to Eric Weinstein, and then he had another backwards and forwards. And what I discovered is that they're arguing about the semantics of the UN paper he wrote. They're not arguing that whether or not it was right to work for a globalist organization in mapping out anything, whether or not you working for the United Nations, inside the United Nations, on the United Nations migration policy might mean that you're in with the devil. And just saying, that might be the problem. But the problem, he doesn't see that as the problem. What he sees as the problem is the semantics about what the migration policy said and how he can twist his own words well enough to make it look like he's not actually a globalist shill technocrat, which he's a globalist shill technocrat.
that's what it's looking like. Yeah. So we had this schism. So you've got the what Jim calls the woo-woo group, who are these disciples of Barbara Marx Hubbard, and they're the spiritual eugenics camp. So they claim that they're not Darwinian.
Pretty woo-woo.
Yeah, there's the one who Barbara, who says we have to call a fourth of the planet. Yeah, lovely that we are the riders of the pale horse. Yes. And so they're the spiritual eugenicists, and they say that they're not Darwinian because they're evolutionary leaders, right? And they don't like the natural selection component of Darwin's theory because it breeds competition and individuality, and they want us to be, part of the monad, the one, the the noosphere. And then you've got the other ones who, like Bret, who are more evolutionary biologists, though they're, kind of a more traditional Darwinian theory. But either way, it's rooted in eugenics. And then you've got Teilhard de Chardin does kind of really influence both of them because they talk about collective intelligence. I mean, what is collective intelligence? It's the noosphere. And so that's kind of that's the like epicenter of the whole framework, the whole idea of building a new framework for what they call a new social operating system for civilization. But they brought Bret in, and I have this like on Game B. It's a Google Doc that talks about the origins, the inception of it, and they say, and Bret says it often in podcasts too. They brought him in for the evolutionary biology expertise. That they bring that component into the complexity theory.
Why him? Why him? There are, I would
He's the only
say,
evolutionary biologist there is.
even at Evergreen, there's probably five better than him. No, like it doesn't make any sense why these people are the ones who keep getting included in this little cabal, which seems to be like a very small amount of people who are all related to these neocon technocrat leader constructs like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and other things. Because this is essentially so let's analyze a couple of things. I mean, we got to get on to a little bit, because if I go back a little bit with Bret Weinstein, I looked into his history just a little bit because I was more concentrated on that man, Eric Weinstein. And with him, I go back and he leaves university and he goes with Heather, and they go to the jungle and they do some projects out there for their degree, for their masters or whatever they're doing, the last part of their university course. And he gets obsessed with telomeres,
Which is anti-aging. Yeah, that's the whole theory behind them. Yep.
Essentially, he takes that as he creates his own website that's specifically about that. In the early noughties. Is actually on his early website, he's connected it up with Eric Weinstein's early website as well. So that was one of the routes that you could accidentally have stumbled across Eric Weinstein's own website if you hadn't thought of looking for more than one, is by looking at Bret Weinstein's old one. And he was obsessed with this with this. Do you think he's someone who gets obsessed like that? Because I think he seems pretty boring. He seems like an evolutionary biologist, super boring. But now he's trying to, like, it's almost like he's trying to summon this mighty beast that lies inside him to lead people into a revolution to reset the whole of humanity by burning absolutely everything to the ground and rebuilding it, trusting the most evil people in the world to build a fair system.
So, I read this article. It was called "The Phoenix Conspiracy" because I was so struck by Bret's, assertion that we need to phoenix the republic, and so there does seem to be a common theme with this phoenixing, and you can go back obviously to, and I do outline this in the article. I go back to ancient mythology. The Rosicrucian symbolism of the bird rising up from the ashes. In ancient Egypt, it was called the Binu bird. So I go through like some of these, the Gnostic texts and their whole concept of this phoenix rising up from the ashes. Most people focus on the rising up because that's very uplifting, and it's, what a beautiful imagery of resilience. But oftentimes they don't recognize that means you have to burn it down first. There's the immolation that happens before the bird rises up from the ashes. So I go through some of that, but then I talk about in modern times, this, symbolism, the semiotics of the Phoenix. And we've got Operation Phoenix. A lot of people are familiar with the CIA Operation Phoenix, but prior to that, there was the Tavistock Operation Phoenix. And this was out of the ashes of World War II. This was when the Rockefellers gave the clinic a big injection of money. They did a big grant donation, and this enabled the Tavistock Clinic to then create the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. They got the grant.
Do you know if it was David or Nelson?
I want to say it was David. I'd have to look that up. I mean, it was when I looked it up, it was just
'Cause
Rockefeller.
I know Nelson Rockefeller was
I don't know if it was one of them.
definitely he was down in South America. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were each. It would make sense. David Rockefeller would be the one who sorts out Britain.
Interesting. Well, when I looked up, it was in the like they said Rockefeller Foundation. So I don't know if it was one of them, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was. So yeah, so this is what do you have? The Nelson Rockefeller Collection, masterpiece of primitive art.
Oh wow.
And it's a little it gets a little esoteric.
Sexy? Oh, why esoteric? It gets a bit Abramovich.
Yes. So yeah, we can just a couple of pages, yeah. But yeah, so that was in 1946, and then the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations opened in 1947, and so the clinic was very focused on like group therapy and individual therapy, and then the institute was focused on more on like corporate culture, mass scale research. So this is, but Operation Phoenix was when they did a whole gutting of the structure in order to create the the structure for the institute, and a lot of it was predicated on the War Office selection boards that were done but working with the British intelligence during World War II. And it was Eric Trist and Wilfred Bion that had created these tests. They called them quote unquote intelligence tests, but even they say it wasn't like traditional intelligence tests. The way they described it sounds kind of like tests for change agents, and they don't use that term, although that term is out of Tavistock. I mean, that was Kurt Lewin who created this concept as a change agent. But anyway, so that's Operation Phoenix, and then of course we have the CIA Operation Phoenix, and then we've got a couple of other Phoenix movements, but this was the one that really struck me, was that we've got Operation Phoenix for 2026, which is the United Independence Movement. And this is their plan. And there's actually a whole Google Doc on this. Their plan, they're saying RFK is at the helm of this. And their
I want people. I want people. You gotta watch that guy. He can't stop it all the time. He wants to go out and he wants to, oh my God, take over the world, but not let anybody know about it. And all of those women. Oh. Sorry, that was my best RFK impression.
Yeah, well, he's running this. The whole plan is to flood Congress for the midterms in 2026 with quote unquote independence. But when you start looking into this, it gets, it's technocrats, exactly. And it gets very interesting because Bret is very involved in this. So at the INC, which is the Independent National Convention 2023, and of course, then we start getting all these figures like Brock Pierce, right? Brock Pierce was helping Christopher Life, who's kind of the leader of this independent. He had the One Nation Party, the United Independent Movement, and Brock Pierce helps to fund it. But Brock Pierce was also advising Epstein on cryptocurrency, right? And then Brock Pierce had that company that Bannon ended up becoming the CEO of, and he was like 20 years old, and he's the crypto like expert.
Sounds the Central Intelligence Agency to me. Oh, go on.
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, he like launched this whole crypto community down in Puerto Rico, and he had a house in on Roosevelt near the naval base there. And Bannon was naval research, right? So
And Eric Weinstein was
Eric Weinstein,
Office of Naval Research.
Research, yeah. So now you've got this whole
So are you accusing them of being bastards then, basically?
I mean,
Go on, sorry.
there are some themes that look interesting, but yeah, so they did this, and I can't find the speech, but in 2023 at this Independent National Convention, Bret Weinstein was the keynote speaker at 7 o'clock. And it was April, I believe it was April 5th that he spoke, but the event was from April 3rd to April 5th. And I can't find like anything on it, but there were some rumors that it was something like Phoenix the Republic was the title.
So is this Bret Weinstein you say was
This
the
is
keynote
Bret
speaker?
Weinstein. And if you look, so I can't get the video because there's a paywall. And even when I go to the Wayback Machine, like you have to be a member, I can't find any videos. But it does say on that website that Bret was the keynote speaker at 7 o'clock on April 5th. And also, and I have this picture in my article, and I have the links to that also in my article, but it says independence rising above the ashes of the failing system. Are you tired of watching same old political divisions tear our country apart? Have you grown
Yes.
weary of manipulative partisan talking points and political
Yes.
posturing? Yeah, right. Do
Yes.
you want our nation to come together with better solutions beyond endless cycles of corruption and conflict? What if
Oh yeah.
era of unity, independence is upon us, and you have the power to shape it? And then it goes on to talk
See,
about uniting
Kyle.
independence, revolutionary politics. But this is part of what the Emancipation Party was doing too. They call it the transpolitical or transpartisan movement, where you move beyond the two-party duopoly illusion, whatever you want to call it. I'm not saying there aren't problems and that they don't use a Hegelian dialectic, but I wrote another article called The Technological Age of Aquarius, Third Way Dream or Digital Dystopia. Spoiler alert, I think you know where it's going. But talking about how they're using third way politics in order to
Mhm.
usher in this technocratic movement through the independence. And they literally,
Totally.
you know this because you've written about this as well, but Anthony Giddens in his book Third Way, the Fabian Socialist, literally says, he talked, what did Elon Musk say? We constant congregate the center. But he literally says, Anthony Giddens says, it's the radical center, and that it's always left of center because it has to be for their social and emancipatory goals. So anyway, this
Mhm.
whole movement with the United Independent was very interesting because then the following year, Brett starts talking about phoenixing the Republic. And in this United Independent movement, you've got all of these people talking about things like, Jim Rutt talks about liquid democracy. You've got, like, which is just another like technocratic movement where you're using AI. They've got like the quadratic voting, ranked choice voting, conviction voting. They have all these different names for it, and some of them have nuanced differences, but it's all the same thing using AI to eradicate our voice. Yeah, and here we've got Bret Weinstein. This is in 2023, March 29, 2023. And I guess he's doing a space. And then Christopher Life, who is a Game Bee proponent, and he's also the head of this One Life Party. He's an interesting story. I could go on a whole side tangent on him. But if you'd like to join Brett in the upcoming Independent Leadership Convergence, learn more at inc23.us. So he's involved in this whole like third way political movement that they claim are independent, but these people are, it's like Andrew Yang's in it. Not left, it's not right, it's forward. And who
Yeah,
jumped on
not
board
left,
with
not
Elon
right.
Musk when he did his American Party? Who was one of the first people to jump on board and support him? It was Andrew Yang. And then who did he consult right after? Curtis Yarvin. So this Phoenix Conspiracy,
Mhm.
my thesis is essentially that we've got the Dark Enlightenment making a big appearance and really coming to the forefront in the Trump administration, but they're so dark, pun intended, and that they're really abhorrent. And I think a lot of people will recognize that, and it will rush them right into the arms of the divine, nurturing embrace of Mother Game Bee. So
Totally think that Thiel and Yarvin are setting themselves up to be comic book Skeletor characters that can be avoided by running into the arms of the exact people who worked for them all along and who were wanted to stay looking like they were semi-detached, even when they were attached completely.
right.
I mean, there were so many things that I want to say about uh what you were saying there, but when I was writing Clinton Blair the Third Way dossier,
Yeah.
I was the first time that I understood how politics worked. When I looked at third way politics, it was the first time that I was like, oh, that's what I thought it was, but it's not. It's this. It's this. It's the ascendant center. It's this fake center that doesn't really exist, that has no solutions, that is always moving forward. That you don't need any of the solutions. Why do you need solutions for your problems when we can just give you war and austerity? I mean,
Yes.
that's all we're going to give you. The more we purge the left, the more the right ends up being forced into the political center along with us. We can keep it forever, forever. That's how the centrists see it. That's all. People who think they're centrists and people who think they're centrists
Right.
aren't centrists at all.
No.
They just
Radical
have
center.
no.
They
Yeah.
say radical.
So that space that you get to with when you look at third way politics, you start to realize, okay, we were in a stopgap, and there is something further on down the line. It does look a lot like stakeholder capitalism, but an AI algorithm version of stakeholder capitalism, really. Most definitely, there's loads going on that suggest that third way politics is going to be with us for at least a generation now. And it's a fantastic way to play the dialectics because everybody's forced into the center. So you're literally got this pushed out left and pushed out right that you can make look like the pantomime villains. And it's such a small group that you get the intelligence services to manipulate them completely.
Yeah, so there's a document, I believe it was actually 2023. Yep, it was 2023, and it's called In Tandem, The Case for Coordinated Economic Policymaking. And this is the Fabian Society. Yeah, so it's Michael Jacobs, Robert Kelver, Jump Joe Michael, and Frank Van Lerven. And let me see if I can zoom in here so I can see it.
Just while you're zooming in there, when I was writing the third way article, there's one point in it where it's like I'm literally quoting the people who were involved from Fabian magazine.
Yeah.
So it's actually the Fabian magazine itself who are tracing their own devious game of taking over politics and openly talking about it in their own magazine that's got Fabian written right at the top. And people still think that that idea is a conspiracy theory. Then when they say it, where they're saying it right to you, and you can use it as a source, and people still say, no, the most amazing thing about that article and learning about third way politics, I only learned about it because I was trying to work out where to start with the Fabians.
Right.
And me and a guy called Darren Kenton started looking at
great.
Fabianism.
Yeah.
He's wonderful. He's such a beautiful human being.
Yeah.
I've met him. He bought me a fish and chips down in Brighton. It was very nice. We had a good time. And he really helped with that. I mean, beyond helped. We're going
me all sorts of information. He's been very helpful. Yeah.
If he thinks you're interested, he's very interested in showing you.
Yeah.
Because he loves looking at history and this weird history that exists within intelligence. But he's a wonderful guy. He was looking at Fabians and he wanted to show me loads of different parts of how it's connected with modern politics. And when I was looking at it, it all ended up just showing me third way politics. And that really was how I really understood what the system is now. Is I followed the Fabian white rabbit down the hole, and it results in a coherent political ideology that's well mapped out and has been already implemented for over 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
So that's like when I said to people, when I wrote the World Economic Forum articles, I said to people, we're well behind the game. You know, they've chosen our leaders. They've chosen our society. They're going forward on it. All of the systems, they know exactly what they need to do. So we're in trouble and we got to catch up. We're so far behind. We're 3 decades behind what they're planning.
Oh, I think we're further than that, but yeah, for sure. I mean, when you go back and look at what, all these documents that lead up to where we are today with their global Gaia religion based on, which is really it's just that we have the technology today to put what Technocracy Inc. back in 1930s was trying to execute, and they didn't succeed, but they didn't have the technology that they have today. And really, it's the same thing. I mean, what are carbon credits? They're energy credits, the same thing. So I think they are using third way politics, though, to steer people into this, what they think is like the middle ground so that they can usher this in. But you've got on both sides, I mean, they're really ramping it up. But the Game B people are working on, I keep bringing this up, but I think it's worth repeating, is they're working on a global constitution for AI. And so when you talk about like this infrastructure that is based on Gaia religion, there it's the participatory framework for AGI, a global constitution. That's what it's called. And there's like Mariana Bozeman is in it. Ben Goertzel, founder of Singularity Net, behind the Hanson Robotics with the Sophia robot. He's also doing the AI for good, with the UN and the World Economic Forum. So it's all about AI ethics. And then we've got Annalos Smitsman, who is a Game B proponent, and they're talking about how we have to create a global constitution for AI, and that we have to parent the AI, because the AI is of course going to become sentient. We need to parent it so we can co-evolve. There we've got like the Barbara Marx Hubbard, co-create.
Oh my
The
God.
movie Megan 2.0 actually ends, by the way. I was so freaked out.
Don't tell me this. I haven't seen it. Don't tell me the end of a movie. That's cheating. I'm gonna put that out of my head. Oh, it's hard to put it out of my head.
Well,
It's hard to
you
put it.
don't
Well,
know
it's
the
lucky
context, so you should still watch it.
yeah, it's lucky it's early hours of the morning because I'm gonna possibly forget that. So
Yeah,
listen.
but
Let's
here's
go in.
the clincher. In that document,
Go
they
on.
talk about how we might have to become subordinate to the AI because their ethics might be better than humans because they're better.
Oh, really? They'll know better than us. This is the way it. Okay, so we're coming up to the end.
Yes, let's
And
wrap it
we
up.
should come up. We should no, but we should come up to the end. We should think about what the next stage is. We know, for me, I'm going to be releasing an article that's details Eric Weinstein and his work, including his job fronting up Thiel's company while they supply the Ukrainian front, especially with drone technology to bomb and murder women and children like a dirty, rotten bastard would. That I think that we should possibly decide what we think they're both going to do next. Because personally, I think that Eric Weinstein is exposed as he possibly can be. He thinks he can survive it, and he's got loads of hubris, and he's pretentious as hell. And I get a feeling his brother as well both of them may look to go into political office, maybe in 10 years' time. I think they're setting up if all of these technocratic buddies and Game B guys get into significant office over the next two elections, we're likely to see spaces for people like Bret and Eric Weinstein open up as economic advisors. I think Eric Weinstein was fishing for some sort of economic job this time round. And then when I dropped the Migration for the Benefit of All article, that scuppered that a little bit. At least I want to take a little bit of credit for the work I do, but I think it's hard for him to go into any type of political office now because people would say your problem with the migrant crisis. You worked for the UN over and over again. He doesn't understand how completely and utterly dangerous that has been for his career because he can't sneakily sit on the right as what is essentially, you're right, a third way libertarian technocrat neocon. He can't sit on the right and not become exposed. He can't sit on the left and not become exposed. And I think Eric Weinstein is actually a creature of the left.
Oh yeah,
I
I
think
think both
he's-
of them are
yeah.
for sure. Well,
Yeah.
remember, so there was a split between the two, the brothers, when Brett was trying to do a unity party, which is very similar to the Emancipation Party. It's this whole middle way kind of thing, and apparently they had a whole split, like they didn't get along, and they weren't on board with Eric wasn't on board with it. But yeah, they was trying to revive. But I think it is this techno libertarian. So I think this your thought on the politics, I think might very possibly be. This is August 28th, and Bret Weinstein says, "Here's my talk with Matt Kibbe on libertarianism 2.0. It's a good one. Check it out. And someone please tell Elon, who should really unblock me for FFS. I won't say it out loud, but yeah, that's what he writes.
Right.
And that he ought to be thinking along these lines if he's serious about a new party. A failure to rethink good governance would render any new party useless." I haven't seen this episode, but that is essentially this whole like network state kind of idea is all appealing to libertarians. And of course, Peter Thiel is at the helm of it. Balaji Srinivasan actually credits the seasteading concept with, and he in his book talks about how we can revive the seasteading, but we first need to get network states off the ground. And that then when we have the network states, with crowdfunding for a cruise ship, won't be a big deal. But that's what they're doing. It's really all about these network states, and Peter Thiel already has it in Prospera. The subsidiary was called Vitalia, a city where death is optional was the tagline. You can go back to the Wayback Machine and find it, but now he calls it Infinita. And Prospera is doing all sorts of like life extension, I would argue kind of transhumanist type of experiment. They're also doing these using virtual reality headsets to create transcendent experiences like psychedelics would, but doing it with these headsets. And but this whole libertarian concept, first of all, I mean, I have philosophical issues with libertarianism, but what they're doing is not even libertarianism. They're appropriating libertarianism because they think that they'll collect a broader audience. They can get the left libertarian, the right,
Totally.
and yes.
That's what you got to do within third way politics. So you no longer can appeal to the left or right because you've purged them from your party and you pushed them out and you've ridiculed them and you've made, yeah. So in America, we see the expression of that, for instance,
Yes.
within the Q movement.
Oh yeah.
Like, what was the output of creating a third way system in America? Well, you had this a group that we could then control, wind up to go and enact things that means that we can get more power for government, of course. And we can get more authority, and we can get our guy in, and then we can play the dialectic and look like the hero as well by giving them all a pardon and saying, "Oh, it was January 6th they were all heroes." I mean, the whole thing is just an act. We know what the act looks like. This is one of the things I was thinking earlier.
Okay.
I just want to, like, as final thoughts for this for myself.
Yes.
Like, I was thinking about how a lot of these, you don't have to, in the future, you don't have to necessarily predict technologies.
Right.
You don't have to necessarily predict events. You don't have to predict who's in office, whether it's left, whether it's right. None of that really matters. You only have to predict the cycles and the processes that make up the cycles, and then you need to cohabit one of those processes that's the most important within a cycle, so that when that cycle begins, it leads to you. The wheel leads to you. And I think this is what we see on a grand scale happening with Peter Thiel, with Curtis Yarvin, with the Epstein's, Edge, all of the people that were involved in it. Nearly every single one of them. None of them can come out smelling of roses. They're all involved in something. It's recreating society without the majority consent. It's undemocratic rethinking and redesigning of society. But a lot of this is them realizing that the same cycles will happen. The same events will manifest. You know, we talk about the mockingbird media of the past, and we know that the modern iteration of that is expressing all around us. And if you know that's going to happen in 1980s, when you're like, say, 1986, 1987, when you're a young Peter Thiel and you're in Stanford University and you start up the Stanford Review with money from the grandfather of neoconservatism, what's his face, Crystal,
Irving Kristol.
what was his first? Irvin, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm from Wales, so I want to go Ivor, Ivor. No, but no, Irving Crystal. You know, Irving. When the 6 Day War happened, it changed American policy towards Israel, and they changed almost everything. They got on board with a real and this birth of a new ideology, and neoconservatism, and the intelligence infrastructure was able to start on the road to breaking down the Soviet Union by using NGOs and all of these different mechanisms. They knew the cycles that would happen, and they knew if they put the people in the right areas, they're going to go, you know, if they train the leaders through Young Global Leaders programs or Kissinger's International Seminar, then you know you're going to end up having only a certain selection pot of people who can do the job, and you've trained them all. If you know the cycles of the past and you know they're going to repeat, if you know that the mockingbird media is going to happen, you know how to co-opt it in the future. You can already, when you're a young Peter Thiel and you're learning about the media yourself, being funded by the grandfather of neoconservatism while you're in university, to set up this historic moment of setting up the Stanford Review, and then going on. If you actually look at what Peter Thiel was doing during that time, it was really playing, like bringing in those neoconservative voices, playing the dialect. It's causing people to be angry, so that it creates opportunity. It creates the synthesis, and it goes up the Jacob's ladder that you talk about so often, and creates a new thesis. And he was wielding that device. The people around him were wielding that device constantly, on and on, churning. And they've been doing that because they are able to see the cycles that are repeated for tens of thousands of years and co-opt them before they happen. If you train all of the people up in how to be corrupt in a certain way, when that corruption comes around in the cycle, you have all your guys in place ready to go. And we've seen that constantly throughout history. People are trained up in what's going to be important in the future. That's what Edge was. They're training the technocrats in the exact vision of the future that the academics have seen, and the governments give money to intelligence agencies and operatives to be ahead of the game of other countries. It's normal that this happens, but in the same way that it's normal that it happens, we're heading towards a different era in humanity, transhuman era of humanity, and it's out of control. One last thing I'll say, when I was watching the videos from the SpaceX Edge 2009 conference,
Yeah.
it's extraordinary how slapdash, how uncaring, and how flippant the people involved in it are. When they talk about risks, they say, don't worry, we'll sort something out. We'll just do something.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely an influence operation. I mean, he had the billionaires dinners every year also. And that wasn't just scientists. So it was like, top athletes and celebrities, really just influencers, people.
Peter Gabriel, too.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Something was in the air that night. But yeah, so there was it's definitely an influence operation. So I think you're right that they watch these cycles, and they're training people, but they're also not just training them and grooming them, but they're also putting them into positions, right? They're raising them up so they'll be in a position to be a mid-tier puppet master, not necessarily at the top, but they're mid-tier, right? They have strings below them. And what was I going to say about about Peter? I've lost my train of thought. But yeah, so
I think that was pretty a pretty deep. I've not seen a conversation that's that full about the Weinstein brothers. Like, there's that full of information about them. I don't think there's anyone who's covered it, Game B especially, as much as you. And for me now, I've started going at the Ed stuff, but I've really been going at Eric Weinstein because, hey, listen, to everybody who's watching this, and this is a really good way to end it. All of these people who are up there, they're all able to be defeated by exposing them for who they really are. And that isn't as hard as you think. If I go to Peter Thiel and show you that he's the worst person humanity has to offer, you're going to do what everybody's doing right now, shout at Peter Thiel, and that's what Peter Thiel wants. But the people underneath Peter Thiel, the people supporting Peter Thiel, the people propping up Elon Musk, the people propping up these other people, they're the ones who can be chopped away one by exposing them for what they are and watching them as they crumble, because they do not have the same power as Peter Thiel or Elon Musk has. They do not have the same stature. So start taking away the meat that's around the actual enemy that's ahead of us, because you're not, I don't think we're necessarily gonna, I can write about Elon Musk till the cows come home, but I am not making a dent, because he's got all of the tools to change, to change people's minds and change people's behaviors. But Eric Weinstein, Bret Weinstein, these are defeatable. These, my friend, are non-player characters pretending to be player characters.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is Peter Thiel was a master chess player. And I think that's quite relevant,
Yes.
right? Like he's watching the board and he's several steps ahead, figuring out which pawns to move. So he's definitely very strategic, and he's been utilized for those reasons. I agree. But yeah, the Weinsteins I think are interesting. It's not just the Weinsteins though; it's really the orbit, right? So when you think about you've focused quite a bit on Eric. I mean, he's got this whole orbit, but so does Bret. I mean, Bret's got this whole medical freedom movement around him. And the medical freedom movement really looks to me, I don't know whether it was created to be, designed to be, or whether it was co opted, but it looks very much like an operation at this point. Um,
Oh yeah.
again, moving the Overton window, right? You've got all these people who traditionally were on the political quote unquote left. I call them like the crunchy moms who probably only either make, grow, or purchase organic things, and probably have their own homeopathic tinctures and they give the children nothing else. And then I'm not saying this to be derogatory, but these are the prototype, right? This is the archetype of what to think of. And most of these people would never have they either didn't vote at all, they were like anti-establishment, outside the system, or they were on the left. They would never have thought of voting Republican. And now suddenly the medical freedom movement swoops in and slaps the label on them. They're, right wingers, whether they're libertarians, conservatives, or Republicans, whatever it is. And a lot of them were very confused at first, but they kind of jumped on board. Oh, I guess that's you now. Now we vote Republican. And I think it was a very, again, I don't know whether it was designed to be that way. I'm not privy to these sort of things. I can only look from the outside. But it looks really like a very clever operation to shift the Overton window and to create a steering movement, right? This is like prime social engineering. So you've got all these people who are claiming to be for medical freedom. And then what do we see? The whole Maha movement is a great example of this. Who could argue with Maha? Make America healthy again? I'm all on board. Get rid of your seed oils, all the chemicals, and Red Lake 40 and all this nonsense. Great. Like, let's make food real, and let's make the medical system about health as opposed to sick care. All these things are great. But what did RFK say? He said that part of MAHA is MABA, which is Make America Biotech Accelerate. He actually used the term accelerate, accelerationism, right? So it's now all about wearing the wearable, the Internet of Wearable, which is tied to the Internet of Everything. But again, you're seeing how this movement is being used to steer.
It's the health of transhumans, not humans.
Right. So this is, I mean, ultimately where it looks like it's all going. It looks like this is all part of the transhuman and technocratic agenda. And yeah, I agree. It's good to look at, you know, a lot of people have criticized me when I did the Phoenix Conspiracy article because they said, oh, you think like Peter Thiel is the grand puppet master and there's nobody above him? Like, no, he's only a billionaire after all. I mean, obviously there are trillionaires who are probably pulling his string. But yeah, the Precision Medicine Initiative, that was Obama. But this goes even further back. There was a whole, you know, document back in 2002. But I think that in order to blunt operational success, we need to be able to see the strings to cut those. We can't cut strings that we don't see. So I don't doubt that there are puppet masters above him, but what we can see in the lay of the land right now, I think is what we need to address, and we need to call it out, expose it, and push back wherever we have the power to do so, so that we can stay human, serve humanity 1.0.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I listen, I'm positive, but still, I ask myself, and I straw man and strong man, whatever. I ask myself that one question. Maybe this is the one question to leave everybody on and leave everybody think about. Because I'm on the side of humanity. I'd like to continue the way we are.
Yes.
But if someone came and offered you a real offer, not an experiment, not anything that's might not work, a real offer to spend 100 years of prime life with all of the people you love, what would you do? And that's the only question you need to start asking yourself, because it'll lead you down the path of either deciding whether you're with humanity or against humanity.
Yeah. And what is, I think another question asked is, well, what are the prices you're going to have to pay for that? Right? Because
there's a lot of questions that follow.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there are centenarians, right? People who live to be 100 or well over. But that the path that they're advocating to get there is not a human, it's a synthetic biology course.
Even if you did want that, you don't have to take a bad path to it. I mean, one day, if that's going to be in humanity's future, it's going to be in humanity's future. But we don't have to trust Bret Weinstein and Eric Weinstein with that future. Not at all.
Or Peter Thiel or anyone or Epstein. So here's the $1 million question.
I don't know. I quite like Epstein. No.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
No, him and Hitler, they're all right. The rest of them.
Here's the big question. So Epstein, and then we can close out. But Epstein had his Zorro baby ranch, right? Where he wanted to seed humanity with his DNA. But
I'm 50-50 about it.
Oh, but supposedly he had no children. So this means that either he was infertile, which I don't know. I have nothing to base it on, but that's not my gut instinct. Or they're doing some sort of weird kind of genetic experiments or cloning at that Zorro Ranch, or it was all a psyop and it never existed. I don't know. What do you
The plans now? Listen, hey, I know a lady. Let's talk Zorro on X, who will tell you much about that I don't know. I know quite a bit about the Zorro Ranch. I did research it for One Nation Under Blackmail, and I will say one thing, that at the same time, some of the people who claimed to be Epstein victims but were actually part of the operation were also seeding in this narrative that there was baby farms and everything going on at Zorro Ranch. When you looked at the plans, I mean, they can use rooms for whatever, but when you looked at the plans, the places where baby farms are meant to be was planned as a gymnasium, as a little pool, as a room where the generators go, and things like that. So, but it was expanded massively under Jeffrey Epstein's tendency, and the plans that he had who knows? Because he is hanging around with all of those people. So it is easy to make your mind go a little bit mad. But who knows what his plans were? But they were big. He got interrupted because really he was about 7, 8 years into the project when the FBI came knocking at the door and the police came knocking at the door because the mother of one young girl had gone and said, I'm not going to accept this, and found a policeman who would actually arrest a billionaire. Legendary woman. Legendary woman. She's the reason that one woman, really, people could say, I can, there's people who claim that they went to the FBI and I don't believe a lot of it. Just don't. There's people who try and prove themselves to be heroes. There's no evidence of it. But I tell you, there is evidence of one amazing woman saying, I'm not going to accept this for my daughter,
Right.
going and putting so much pressure on the Palm Beach police. And one policeman who's passed now, who stood up and said, oh, no, I'm not going to stand by and just be what I am going to sort this stuff out, From that moment on, no. It's really that's where Zorro Ranch project stopped. That's where the ideas of what Epstein wanted to do in the future stopped. That's where it started to become a weird media operation. And I think that's where what we'll find in the near future. What we'll find is that after Epstein was released in 2009 onwards, he invested masses in creating the independent media that we see today. That's why I think we're eventually going to.
Well,
And
that
I don't
ties
think
in with the
anybody's ready
whole.
for that.
Well, that ties in with the whole United Independence and the Operation Phoenix movement. I mean, that's where that goes. So yeah, I think that's very likely. All right. Well, and then there's also one little last thing. Because the intellectual dark web, what likely was an influence operation. I mean, that's what it kind of looks like. The intellectual dark web became the intellectual deep web. And that was Game B, and that was created by David Fuller, who created Rebel Wisdom. And David Fuller did documentary on Jordan Peterson. That was one of his early documentaries, and he used to be a documentary maker for the BBC.
Oh, really? I wonder what he used to make for the BBC. I'd like to find out. I bet you it'll be something working with the same people who work with Sergei Skripal, because there's some people who worked in the BBC, people like Mark Urban, who were actually in Sergei Skripal's tank regiment. Sergei Skripal was, of course, poisoned with Novichok in Salisbury, famously apparently by two Russians, but no one's sure that he actually got poisoned or anything like that. And it might be all a bunch of bullshit. But still, there was people who were involved in the BBC with that, and I've met people from the BBC who claim to be former BBC as well. I'm not sure if you can trust or not. They're very complicated. Most of the agents who, who are on the independent media are ones that have come from mainstream media, and you could look at it like this: imagine Tucker Carlson is a real actual journalist, and he went to the CIA and they turned him down and said, oh no, you can't be, we're not interested in you. And then he went off and became the leading anchor for Fox, and then got put up by this intelligence construct which is Elon Musk, as being like central to X. I think we see the CIA directly talking to us, directly making up the stories and directly telling us what to think and believe. And this is all just part of it.
Yeah, that seems kind of likely. Yeah, there was a whole article about like the formation of the intellectual deep web and how it spun off. But yeah, my antenna was raised when I saw that he worked for the BBC, because I mean it doesn't prove that, but it does.
I'll have a little look into him though. Now that I know that, I won't mind having a little look.
So there's this. I think, is this it? The story to bind us. Is this the new narrative? Yes. Okay. I will put this just to pull it up for people, but it is in my article. Yeah. So they talk about how the intellectual deep web and a new meta narrative, which meta narrative is like the, Game B lingo. That's how you can always tell. They have their own language, basically, which is interesting because when Eric Weinstein talks about coining he talks about coining the intellectual dark web. It's like an 18-minute video, and it's all Game B language, like the whole thing.
I thought you were going to say it's all him filleting himself, but basically the same thing.
Yeah, maybe same thing. But Jordan had told me like that he's not, involved with it, but I'm like his language is all the same. So like yeah, anyway. But yeah, so that's what it became. So yeah, I think we could close out unless you have anything else.
Close out. Definitely think that the people at home, if you've been listening to this, you really should be interactive about Eric and Bret Weinstein because they're serious. If what we're saying is right, serious manipulators of the narrative of wider society, and literally, I people don't understand what this. Just the last word should be. They're basically advocating genocide, for God's sake. Just think about the world that they're talking about, burning everything down, all of our homes, all of our possessions, everything down, all of our lives, all of our structures, all of our systems, everything down because they know best. They know best. They know best.
Yeah, well, I mean, transhumanism, it would be the extinction of humanity, I think. And my biggest concern is the free will, because once they put us into collective intelligence, noosphere, right? This is Jim asking regarding our current operating systems, should we fix it, burn it down? Like burn it down, what? Or build new OS membranes. So this is talking about, building a new operating system for civilization, which is what they say it is, Game B is. So yeah, if people should definitely do their own research and investigate and let us know what you think.
Definitely. Come across, they're showing it. Come across to newspace.com. I'm always happy to have a conversation. So come have a conversation with us.
Yes, likewise. I'm at CourtenayTurner.com. And yeah, likewise. And you can find my articles are mostly on the Substack. So that's CourtenayTurner.substack.com. So, well, it was fun.
Excellent. I'm so glad we did this. I am really glad to.
Me too.
It's a really good conversation about Bret and Eric. I think no one's had it properly. And I think that we've also predicted a little bit about the future that I think we're going to see come true. We know it's going to come true. Other people are going to see it in about 4 or 5 years' time. I think they'll start to see Bret Weinstein crying as he takes political office.
Oh boy. Well, I will just say, I know like a lot of people get very protective. We'll just use that word. And as I said, I mean, I don't know Eric, so I can't speak to that. I have met Bret. He was very lovely, very nice, great to talk to. I'm sure he's a lovely dinner companion. But really, what I tried to lay out in the Epstein article is that it's about the first principles and it's about the philosophical underpinning. And where they lead is transhumanism and technocracy. And this is the thing that is shared with Epstein and everything that he was funding. That's my concern. So, people say like, oh, they have great intentions, and they may. I honestly, they may, but they also say the road to hell was paved with good intentions. So there's that.
True.